take any questions if anybody has any. Yes, Lynn. Yeah.
I recently got my auto renewal insurance policy, and I looked at it, and I called Liberty Mutual up, and I said, I have no accidents, no incidents. Why is it in the last 2 years, my policy goes up a couple $100? This is your unfortunate enough to live in rain. And you tell me crime rate's going down, nobody else thinks so.
You can check it on the website, ma'am.
What good does it do when my insurance goes up like crazy? You're not doing enough, obviously. When people, in Union Hospital, when the nurse said to me, don't ever walk downtown at night.
I think there are a lot of people in this room that would disagree with you about the ability to walk downtown at night.
Many people who aren't here don't.
Well, I
The
think
crime rate is terrible.
I think they haven't visited downtown in a while, perhaps, because when I go downtown at night now,
It's not just downtown, you've got areas in the city nobody dares go to. You've got a crime rate problem. You pick up the paper, there's a stabbing or a shooting. What are you doing about those people?
I've told you, I increased the number of police officers. We have 193 today. I have CLTs.
Do they put them in jail where they belong? Do they do anything about that, or do they just grab them on the wrist and send them back out?
That's up to the police department, depending on the time and the officer.
It's your police department. I wish I would never built a house in this city 60-odd years ago. I've got a 5-room house and I'm paying a $4,000 real estate tax.
I'd just like to comment on that. Just FYI, I think Liberty Mutual is a very expensive insurance company. You might
It's
want
no
to
more
consider.
expensive
Well,
than
consider
any-
Geico. They do a very, they've got really good rates for this area. You just might want to give it a call just to
Well,
help.
because of my home and everything else, I get very good
Okay,
rates,
okay,
and
so I
I've
just thought-
never had problems, and I have a lot of discounts.
Okay.
But it's still, the auto insurance went up. I mean,
Mine went down in half last year. I switched to Geico.
Where do you live?
Oh, we
so
live
well, you
here.
might have, maybe you lowered your coverage, but my coverage stays the same. I
So
have
my
good
question would
coverage.
be how much you have lowered the crime
I
rate?
don't, you know what, you talk all day long. It was my money that's got to go out and pay for these things. I mean, I have, as I say, the tax rate I pay, I don't even have a sidewalk.
All right. I think we need to move on to the next
The
question.
city of Watts.
Can you comment on a rumor that recently there was a civil rights case settled by the city against the church on Anchor Road?
I had to sign a confidentiality agreement regarding the settlement. I can tell you that the settlement was 6 figures. It was not taken out of the city budget. The city had insurance to cover that settlement amount. But the church is now being used for worship and for services. And other than that, I really can't comment on it. I think I've heard some of the rumors around town, and most of what I've heard has been pretty accurate, but that's really all I can say without violating the confidentiality agreement that I had to sign.
You talk about the downtown area, and I know that, Lynn, I know Seth and Lori, and a lot of the folks that have been working to make that area nice. But when you go up Union Street, it really looks terrible. There's half the businesses are closed or boarded up. Are there any plans to try to make it more welcoming? And I mean, back in the day, that was the place to be, was on Union Street with all the stores.
Well, first of all, what we started this past summer, last summer, was an even odd street sweeping program so that we could get more of the trash off the streets. And I think you'll acknowledge that the streets are a lot cleaner than they have been in years past because we've been able to get the cars to move to one side or another in order to do a full sweeping every 2 days. As far as what's going on downtown, we do have, as I said, North Shore Community College coming in. They're going to be expanding their campus onto, it's the old Eastern Bank building, and they will have a good number of students over there. on a daily basis. They also are planning on having night classes, so that should bring a little more life to downtown. There are also some plans from the Housing Authority to put in a couple more infill houses up at the upper end of Union Street. Other than that, all I can tell you is that slowly but surely, there are businesses coming into the downtown area, not necessarily on Union Street, but we've had there are now 4 restaurants in a row on Oxford Street. We have the 2 coming in, Michi and Rossetti's on Sutton Street, and I think as you get those little concentrations of areas to eat, it's going to necessarily be expanding into more of the core of downtown, which would include Union Street. Hopefully that helps.
Are there any plans in the future to have a movie theater in Cleveland?
No immediate plan. I think, honestly, if you look at the way, there are very few independently owned movie theaters these days, and the way that the big corporations tend to site them is right on major highways. You know, if you think about Revere, you think about Danvers, you think about Burlington, they're all.
I was thinking about movie around that area.
You've got
If somebody wanted to use the site for that, I would certainly encourage it. There's been some talk about another food retail establishment going into Johnny's Food Master. It just hasn't been finalized yet. And there's also some talk about the old Sir Speedy over on Fort Street, which is right behind City Hall. That may be turning into a food retail establishment as well. But there's just, a lot of these plans are preliminary right now, so I can't really talk about them with any definity until we have something more concrete in place. Yes?
I maybe have to ask this question, but like, I remember when I was, my dad told me this, actually, this is when I was with Brittany, when Mayor Clinton was in the band before the Ford School voting. And like, I believe the should be, they're adding, are you for or opposed, are you for or opposing the voting in the Ford School?
I've already said that I would have no objection to opening up the Ford School for voting. It is the city council that sets the polling places, but I would have no objection if they were to, what they do is they establish by a council vote before every election where the polling places will be held. And if they were to send me a list of polling places that includes the Ford schools, I would happily sign it.
Because I remember they said it wasn't, when the last meeting, they said it wasn't happening. Wow. My dad has no problem going up the stairs. I just don't have any problem going up the stairs. The church not problem going up the stairs.
This has been an ongoing debate for years and years and years, and I have consistently said I would have no problem, but it's the city council that has to set the polling places. All right. Who else did I see in the back?
Share the progress of the ferry that's going to Mr. Boston.
Yeah, it should be open by next year. We're now in the final phase and everything has been funded. So, pretty soon maybe we'll have 2 boats going back and forth out of Lynn Harbor, the ferry and the yacht casino. I don't know if any of you saw that, but there is a casino boat back in town. They're supposed to be starting their first trip June 14th. I've been on a tour of it. It's very nice. It's much bigger than the old boat had been. It has elevators in there. And, it'd be nice to have a little fleet going out of Lynn Harbor. That and John's fishing boat. We have a little trio. Pat?
Sure, but, update on the waterfront, what's happening there? I've heard things, but.
Well, that land down on the South Harbor is still being looked at by the foreign investors. They are going to be in town next week, Jane? Next week. So I will be meeting with them. That is not a dead deal yet. Obviously, with the number of different owners over there, a lot of privately owned parcels, it's a very complicated deal to put together. They originally were working with an analyst out of New York City and found that they needed somebody with more local knowledge, so they switched, and now they have an analyst from Boston who's been going through and seeing what the viability is of that site for the proposed particular use. But this company is one of the largest in the world that is backing this financially, so I don't think it's going to be a question of them finding financing for it. I think it's a question of whether it's going to be profitable for them. But we are meeting with them next week. Back.
Hey, Kennedy, what is the standing of the Hawthorne building, the famous building downtown?
It's short up. The land,
Any word about wasting or selling, cleaning the site or?
well, the EDIC did a report, did some sample soil testing over in their parking lot, and it's pretty heavily contaminated. One of the problems with remediating just that parking lot is that the contamination started from the old White's Laundry up on Willow Street, and the flow of the water, the flow of anything is toward the ocean, so it started at White's, ran across Willow Street, and ran across underneath the Hawthorne's parking lot. I have met with the Hawthorne family and their advisors a couple of times. I've seen some conceptual plans. They don't really have any interest in getting it sold or developing it right
So
at
legally, they could pay their taxes and it could remain as it is.
We could try to take it by eminent domain, but I have to say, the Athanas family has probably hundreds of millions of dollars, at least tens of millions of dollars, and I personally would rather be working with them and getting them, they shored it up. I mean, it's not a hazard anymore as it was a while ago, but I would rather work with them than to try to take it from them, because that would just involve Lynn in a very costly court suit that would take years and years. Yes?
We heard that the Federal Street property owned by GE was contaminated when they were looking at it for site for classical. Why would they put a food store on that same land?
They have been doing remediation at that site for years now, and it's all overseen by the Mass DEP. And once the DEP is satisfied that it has been cleaned up to a level of usefulness, they issue what they call a final report. And the final report came through in the fall of last year that said it had been cleaned up to the point where it could be used for a variety of uses, and a food retail establishment was one of the acceptable uses. This is not the city making this determination, it is the DEP making that determination. There's one part of the land that was still not cleaned up to that high level of use, and that is in the corner over by Waterhill Street, Spencer Street, where, kind of where the old neighborhood factory is. That little corner is not up to the standards of the rest of the property. So that will be part of the parking lot. You won't see the store on that part of the land. Do you have anything? Mary Ellen?
But then 20% of the people in this whole country only making over $80,000 a year. How do we justify Lynn pays such high, exorbitant, not you of course, but the rest of the people that are above you in salary? They get city cars, they get their gas paid for, they get cell phones, plus incredible benefits at our expenses. My property tax, as she said, goes up every year. I'm paying more like $7,000 on a single family house. And it keeps going up as the services go down. And I don't see how you're going to put a cap on it so that we can get some relief at some point, because my friends in Newton and Concord have houses valued more than mine, but they're paying more than like $2,000 less per year on their property taxes, even though they have the best schools in the state, brand new buildings. They're paying less than what I am paying for these old school buildings, old parks.
Well, the housing stock in Lynn is not as valuable as the housing stock in Concord or Newton. So, I mean, there's only so much land we have here in Lynn to be able to extract property taxes from. I mean, and as I said, the average single-family home property tax bill actually went down this year.
Did the rate go up? I did ask.
Mine went down.
The assessment goes up. Those of us along Lynn Woods were the only ones that went up
But I
this
can
year.
tell you,
I did find out.
part of it is some of the benefits that have been worked into the union contract, some of them were placed there by city ordinance. And one of them that I fought against vehemently was the education incentive. It was passed by the city council maybe 10 or 12 years ago. That allows city department heads up to 25% bonus on their base salary each and every year if they have a degree. And I thought that was kind of double dipping, not in a manner that is not permitted, but it's permissible double dipping. Because if the city sets, for example, the city solicitor's office at a particular salary, one would assume that the city solicitor, as a prerequisite to being in that position, would have a law degree. But the way this ordinance is written, now they're getting 25% on top of that. And I think if we got rid of the education incentives, you'd see a huge drop in the compensation.
Why don't you then?
It's not up to me. The city council is the one that passes the ordinances. It is ordinance, current ordinance, so it is therefore law right now. There's no, I don't think there's any wish on the part of the city council to undo that. But what our charter calls for is for the city council to review and determine the rate at which department heads are going to be paid in the city of Lynn. And instead, we just have this automatic 25% bonus that goes on each and every year for department heads, or up to 25%. If you have a bachelor's degree, it's 20%. If you have an associate's degree, I think it's 10 or 15%. But that's a lot of extra money going out of the city treasury. Okay?
It's election time coming up, and so the question would be, what would be your vision or plan for a second term, or what would be some of your objectives that you want to get done second term?
I think we're moving in the right direction. I like the fact that we are seeing businesses come into it, and it has been pretty substantial in the last couple of years, and even in the last year with the Market Basket, with the Kettle Cuisine, with the Rossetti's, with the Demici's. And that is because they are seeing Lynn as a good investment opportunity. And it wasn't like that in the past. People were afraid to invest their money in Lynn. And now we're kind of lifting this veil, this cloud that has been hanging over the city of Lynn. And we're becoming a little more comfortable in our own skin, I think, as a city. And with that comes a certain amount of confidence. And with the confidence here, in addition to the increase in public safety, which has driven out quite a number of gang members, by the way. We've gone from about 1,200 gang members a couple of years ago down to about 350 known gang members today. So I think that outsiders are seeing that. They're not as afraid to come to Lynn. They're not afraid to go downtown at night. They're not afraid to walk around the city. And I think that that makes us a more welcoming place for them to do business. I would like to continue that. I would also like to continue with the transparency, having everything on TV, the city council and the school committee, having use of online. We've been moving toward some renewals that are available for doing online. I'd like to expand that program some more. I would like to see the Thurgood Marshall Middle School built, then go on to the Pickering Middle School. We also have further down the pipeline, Cobbett, Tracy, and Rick, what's the third one?
So is four, by far.
Cobbett and Tracy and Pickering and Marshall. But the city, the school committee wants to put together a long-term capital plan so that once we get the funding for Pickering, we're then ready to jump right on that, because our schools certainly are in bad shape. And I told you about the millions of dollars that have put into them over the last year. Eventually, they're old buildings and they're tired and they will give out, and that's why it's so important to have that pipeline going. But I do feel as though the city is on the right track. Using the auditorium to bring people in here has been of great financial benefit. I think whether or not Suffolk Downs gets a casino is going to have a huge impact on the direction that the city goes. Because if Suffolk Downs is chosen as a casino site, I think you'll see a hotel on the Lynn, without a doubt. I mean, I think it makes it most probable that there will be a hotel on the Lynn. Without the casino going in, that still remains up in the air. I would still like to see a hotel servicing the 8th largest city in Massachusetts. One of the problems with that type of development and waiting on Suffolk Downs is that the gentleman who owns the biggest parcel of land on the South Harbor also holds a huge stake in Suffolk Downs. So he's not going to be doing much with that parcel until he sees what's going on with his other parcel. So there are a lot of moving parts, but I think we're lining up the people, the investors, so that we will be able to get things developed once they move off the stick on Suffolk Downs. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, I know that, I believe it was last year, the state of the city, you told us that you had just hired a grant writer.
Yes.
And now I understand that we no longer have a grant writer, and I was wondering what your intentions are as far as pursuing that.
I guess the best way to put it is back to the drawing board, because we did have a grant writer for 9 months. We found people to be very territorial in their grant writing. For example, the schools already have a full-time grant writer, so there were no school grants that our grant writer was able to participate in. The police have their own grant writer, Deputy Chief Santoro. So he didn't want to have the grant writer helping him out. Same thing over at the fire department, community development, economic development, they all had their own grant writers. And part of the compensation structure for the grant writer was if he wrote a grant and it came in, based upon the amount of money that he brought in, he had bonuses that he could attain. But if he got a grant that had been given 2 years earlier to somebody else, they would say, no, you can't get credit for that because we got it 2 years ago, they already knew about us. And it got to the point where it was very difficult to compensate him in a way that wasn't very cloudy. So he left in January, and we've still had plenty of grants coming in. In fact, most recently, we got a $400,000 grant for McManus Field. And that partnered with the $400,000 in the bond is going to be used, at least the plan calls for it right now, is to put right near the skate park, to put another splash pad, to have the inner city kids come in. The bandstand money that I told you about came in from a grant. The Mass in Motion gave us a $240,000 grant to encourage healthy habits in the city and to put those mile markers around the city. The police have gotten plenty of grants, which has enabled us to maintain the hiring that we've been doing. The fire department just got a $300,000 public safety grant to distribute smoke detectors, to get their Scott packs replaced. So there are grants coming in even without the grant writer. I don't want anybody to think that because we don't have the grant writer, we don't have grants coming in. Because they are, it just seems to be very decentralized in the city of Lynn, and there didn't seem to be too much of a desire to bring it into one central location. And that's the long and short of it. Well, thank you all very much for having me.